think you can just vandalize and continue dumping there and continue graffitiing there. That is not Council District 6. You will not continue to come and dump in our community because we are on it. So thank you very much to all of you who have helped with that.
Thank you. Nuys, do you support the mixed-use development policy? If so, where do you think good locations would be for such projects? And from where would funding come?
Yeah, I do support the mixed-use development proposal if it's strategically going to revitalize an area. For example, Van Nuys Boulevard is a good area for us to strategically look to see where it can possibly revitalize some of these empty buildings that have been sitting empty since after the Northridge earthquake. For example, Panorama City is a prime example of that. Montgomery Ward, last year there was a developer that was very close to getting a deal with the property owners. The deal fell through. I think they want to go back again and try one more time. But the Montgomery Ward, which is almost an 18-acre site, has been vacant. I would love to do something there and then connect it to the Panorama Mall, because quite frankly, the Panorama Mall should look different. I mean, that was the first mall when I was growing up, almost 30 years ago, where that's where you went to go shop. That is not somewhere where it's necessarily conducive to the things that I want to go purchase. So I want to figure out a way to connect all of that. The Panorama Towers, which is south of Roscoe Boulevard, Roscoe and Van Nuys, is another example of where you can bring mixed-use development projects. Development projects that don't make any sense for the neighborhood, that residents don't support, are not going to work. And I've taken very strong stances against some of the development projects that, quite frankly, are going to be that are not going to work for the neighborhoods that they're proposing them to get built, and I've taken positions on that. And in areas where I think they're going to strategically revitalize a corridor, I think that's where we need to get smart about it, incentivize some of these development projects. But again, it has to be strategic, and it has to be in an area where very little is happening, and how we can bring some of these corridors back.
Thank you. Just one, since there's a little bit of time, just a little follow-up. You're probably familiar with the J.C. Penney in city of San Fernando, the mixed-use development project there. Would you like to see something like that done in your district?
With the Montgomery Ward side, when the developer came to talk to me about what they wanted to do there, it was definitely a mixed-use project with shops and restaurants, and that development includes the Old Carol's and possibly the Black Angus across the street. That's not there anymore. And so we talked about a lot of different ideas in terms of condos and shops at the bottom. The shops are important because, again, we want to be able to lure something that's nice that people are going to want to go to, not necessarily, the marijuana shops and the pawn shops that you see up and down the boulevard. That's not what I'm interested in.
So the mixed-use development, for those of you that may not know what that means, it's basically they'll do commercial on the first floor, and then they'll do usually apartments on the second floor. What I'm strongly opposed to is the overdevelopment of our communities. We have seen, let's just take Lake Balboa, where it's primarily single-family residential, like Arleta, like Van Nuys used to be, except for some of the big corridors, like Panorama City developed. Panorama City was always considered one of the most beautifully planned communities in the entire western parts of the United States, if not the entire United States. Overdevelopment, developers don't like me. They are not supporting me on my campaign. Why? Because I have been very clear that I do not want to see the overdevelopment of our neighborhoods, our single-family residential neighborhoods. I want to see communities improve. I want to empower the local business owners, but I don't want to see 500 units going up in our neighborhoods. Right now, there's a lot of pressure. What you're going to see, for example, you drive around and you see all these billboards everywhere that say re-elect Nury Martinez for city council. Those are being funded by Lamar. Again, these outside big money interests that are coming in, funding these. I told them before, I was on the city planning commission, and I voted to make sure that we restricted these billboards to Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, downtown LA, LA Live, not in the Valley. I've taken a very clear position. I don't support what they want to do with these electronic billboards, because I saw is that they will promote mixed use developments. They will overdevelop it. They'll put a big electronic billboard on it, and then it's going to ruin our neighborhoods. So if you want that, then go ahead and, vote for, what we have going on. I just want to make it clear to every single resident here. I stand with you when it comes to protecting the character of our neighborhoods. I will not support these big, go up right now when you're driving back, if you happen to be driving up Sherman Circle and Sherman Way off Van Nuys Boulevard, there's probably like 400 or 500 units of apartments that are going on. I don't support that, and I never will. I think that our community has to stay a single family residential neighborhood.
All right, we're going to start with Cindy on this one. What can be done about the murder rate and gang problem in the Mid-Valley? The Van Nuys community was one of the murder capitals of Los Angeles in 2014. And to follow up, what would you support required after-school programs in sports? Would this alleviate the boredom of our at-risk youth?
Public safety is a big priority for me as a person that lives here, for all my neighbors that I talk to, for I'm sure every single one of you that's here. It's unacceptable. On that issue alone, we deserve change. On that issue alone, we need to elect someone different. Because I will take maybe some of the other, I'd rather have, a couch in front of my house that sits there like it does now, for weeks and weeks, than to have somebody murdered, as we have seen. Just the other day, I had a group of mothers from North Hills come to me and say there was 2 people, and actually some of them are here, murdered on our streets. They were desperate. Help us. I'm not the council member, but I absolutely was there with them. There was 2 women that were murdered here, right up the street on Satico and Van Nuys, and in Pacoima. The neighborhood came together. They organized visuals. They said, Cindy, come, be with us, because we are not being listened to. So I will absolutely be with you. Public safety is our biggest issue. We cannot allow for these murders. We cannot tolerate Van Nuys of the entire city of LA, of 4 million people that live in the city of LA. We, right here, where we're sitting at, were the ones that had the biggest increase in crime. That's unacceptable. So if you live in this neighborhood and you're a voter in this neighborhood, on that issue alone, I think you should vote for change.
Amen.
Ready? I absolutely support after-school programming. It's unfortunate that the LA Best programming that exists in other parts of the city isn't anywhere in my district. It just doesn't exist in the schools that are in this community. The issue of gang violence has existed in this area for a very, very long time. We have very dense communities. We have people who don't necessarily understand our laws in this country. We have situations where people are quite frankly afraid to report anything illegal in their neighborhoods, and as a result, they take advantage of that. Some of these neighborhoods have been held hostage. When I go into some of these neighborhoods and we talk about putting together neighborhood watch groups, seldom I'll get maybe 5 or 6 people, and then the next time around we'll have 20 people. It takes a lot of effort to try to get communities, particularly in areas where they're not comfortable with talking to law enforcement, to organize among themselves to get a real presence of law enforcement in these areas. There's also something about the fact that we don't do enough around preventing some of these gang violence issues in our area. We have a handful of service providers in this area, but I don't think it's nearly enough to work with the population that we currently have. I don't think it's enough. We don't necessarily do enough with the schools that currently serve some of these kids that sometimes simply just basically kick them out of school. We just don't do enough with our youth, and we don't do enough with our parents. I think we all are responsible for raising our children. Schools are not necessarily responsible for that. Government isn't either. And so I take a real issue with how we're raising young people these days. There isn't enough respect for authority. There certainly isn't a lot of respect for parents, for that matter. So all of us are responsible for raising. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I am responsible to make sure my daughter adheres to my rules. And so when we talk about gang violence and we talk about youth violence, I also think we need to have a conversation about how we are parenting in this country and in this city. And we need to do that. And it's a tough conversation because I used to have these tough conversations on the school board. But we also need to be cognizant that we are on this together, and law enforcement cannot solve every single one of these issues, and we all need to do our part.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. With regard to affordable housing, and I'm not talking about Section 8 housing, I know that a lot of times constituents mix those two up. And they think that if you're building a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condos that aren't, rental apartments, but to purchase, that you're inviting, the poor people that can't afford to meet their payments, okay? But if there are units that are developed that are affordable for people that are getting their first job right out of college or newly married, or for seniors that are downsizing and want to live in a nice place, do you support the development of such housing that would be managed so that the people that would move in would be earning the kind of income that could support the mortgage?
So that's a really good point. And I'm glad you made the point about how people sometimes perceive development a certain way and the kind of people that would be living there. And it's a constant struggle. I mean, a lot of our communities, for example, Panorama City cannot possibly take any more of portions of North Hollywood. There are very dense areas in my district. But for example, right now, there is a lot of talk about building affordable housing for women veterans that are coming back from the war, that other people, other relatives are perhaps taking care of their children, and they come back to this country with no job, very little skills, and no place to live. And so there is a lot of folks that have come, nonprofits that have come to knocking on my door. For example, Habitat for Humanity, which is a wonderful organization that builds single-family housing for people of low income. But there is a big movement even within their organization to try to build affordable housing for women in particular that are coming back from the war. So I'm very interested in those types of projects where they make sense and where there's got to be community buy-in as well. A project cannot be, rammed down people's throat. It doesn't work that way. I certainly don't work that way in my office. So I like to hear from both sides. But that's an area that I'm very interested in working with, particularly around veteran women that are coming back from the war and lack adequate housing.
Cindy?
I absolutely support keeping housing affordable for all of us. We have a lot of people who are senior citizens who are, or they're just starting, young couple or an individual, young couple with children, or young couple with children, individuals, lots of people who are trying to either preserve their homes, defend their property rights, or have that ability to enter in and actually own a home. It's really expensive and it's really difficult, as we all know. So we have to be able to maintain housing that's absolutely affordable. What I don't support is the overdevelopment of our communities. And I will not support projects that are coming in under the guise of, affordable housing. So you know what they do? They come in, they say, we're going to do an affordable housing. And so when we go in there, the developers, we're going to increase the density. We're going to make sure that instead of this building that has, 101 unit apartments that should have at least 100 parking spots, they're going to say it's an affordable housing project. So give us some kind of leeway, and we're only going to park it for 60 cars or 70 or 80 cars. And guess where all those cars are going to end up? They're going to end up on the streets, and they're going to end up in our neighborhoods. And I'm very strongly opposed to that. The other day, we all know there was this, and those people that live in Lake Balboa, 117 people show up to a meeting. I was invited. We went. 117 neighbors show up, upset about a 6-story, like 100+ unit apartment complex that's being proposed. Now, fortunately, the developer withdrew it, but they withdrew it because of the community. I don't think that your evenings and nights have to be spent going and protesting your city council, your city government, the local developer, because they are trying to overdevelop your neighborhood. We have to, as a community, work together to make sure that the projects that are being developed fit within the character of our residential neighborhoods.
All right, Cindy, we're going to start with you on this one. Research indicates that 1 in 4 foster youth end up homeless after the first 3 years of emancipation. What would you do as a council member to help improve the lives of transition-age youth in CD6?
Yeah, this is an issue too, that homeless issues, foster kids. It's very near and dear to my heart, and I think to a lot of us here. I mean, people in this community, are very sensitive to what we see in our neighborhoods. On one hand, clearly we don't want to see, what we see in the neighborhood, but on the other hand, we want to take an approach that's sensitive, that's humane, and that deals with especially children and kids. I go back again to what opportunities are we providing our kids? We have to be able to have the best schools possible, which we do not, unfortunately, in a lot of parts of our neighborhoods. The district is very different. We do have them, from Sun Valley, as people know, Council District 6, right? Sun Valley to Arleta, to Panorama City, Van Nuys, Lake Balboa. The schools actually vary, right? We do have some really good schools in some parts of the district, and other parts of the district are some of the worst performing schools in the area. So what do you have? You have our kids, we fail them. We fail our kids by not providing the best schools. Every kid, I don't care what part of the city of Los Angeles you live in, you should have the best school possible. Mental health, so that these children have a support system, and we're dealing with mental health. Alcohol and drug abuse. That's one of the big things that we see. Drug rehab, alcohol, rehab has to be incorporated into this. The churches are incredible. I have talked to and worked with dozens of churches in this area from all kinds of faiths and denominations that are working on these issues of the people that are the neediest. I will continue to work with all these different groups and nonprofits and churches and business owners, because as a community, as a society, especially here in Council District 6, what I continue to hear is that we need to solve this problem. And we need to make sure that we take care of it, but that it's, again, that we're not bringing the problems into our residential neighborhoods, but that we're actually solving the problems together as a community. People in Van Nuys are very upset about too many of these transitional homes and services being offered in the community. So it's not that they're opposed to the services, it's just where are they being placed? And to place these facilities in, again, single family residential neighborhoods is not the right thing to do.
Well, a lot of the youth that unfortunately, the foster care kids that unfortunately come into this district happen to be the kids that stand on Sepulveda Boulevard. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a prey. The pimps prey on these kids because they're easy targets. And so part of working with the foster homeless youth in this area is really partnering up with people like Children of the Night that are across the street and finding adequate services for them, because they're not going to be sent back to a foster group home, and they're not going to get sent back to a foster parent necessarily, because that is not a right fit for them, because they come out of having to deal with a lot of very difficult issues, having been trafficked. So that's the youth population that I get to work with. But there's also a community not too far from here, which is the Kittredge Homeowners Association, that have come to me very concerned about the number of boarding homes in their community. And I tell the story of the fact that in my district, we are home to most of the city's landfills, most of the city's trash haulers, an outrageous number of illegal marijuana dispensaries. We have now are two of the largest tracks of human trafficking in the area, along with the motels along Sepulveda Boulevard. We are inundated with things that go on in this district. And if we want to solve the social problems for the city of Los Angeles, Council District 6 cannot possibly be the end-all for all these social issues. We have homeless issues from other communities that sometimes get brought here. And so I think we need to really figure out and own the fact that we have some of these issues and try to resolve them for our community and for people who live here. But we cannot possibly be the home to the array of social issues that is inundating the San Fernando Valley. If people want access to marijuana, if they want access to the prescription marijuana, Brentwood sounds like a very good community to do that. Other parts of the San Fernando Valley, with all due respect, if this was about access and this is about truly getting access to this type of medication, then every single community in this city should bear the burden of having, these marijuana dispensaries. That's the truth. And that is, unfortunately, the kind of things that we need to make sure we protect ourselves from. Thank you.
Nuys, what is your position on fracking, clean energy campaigns, which include the FIT program, solar, wind, and the HYPE program, HEIP, that is involved with DWP?
So I supported the moratorium on fracking that was introduced by my colleague Mike Bonin, and it's currently the ordinance is being drafted by the city attorney's office, so we haven't voted on it. But I've definitely taken a position on that. Having been a former executive director of an environmental nonprofit, I can tell you all the different issues that we've been fighting on in terms of the pollution and the Superfund sites and the landfills that we've had to clean up as a result of the amount of industry that was located near a neighborhood, entire neighborhoods at one point. So in terms of the FIT program, I've always supported it. I think it's, I think DWP, if we can, and our residents take advantage of the program where they can put solar roof panels on their homes or on carports, that's the way to do it. I certainly don't support it being or inundating, having the solars on ground where it messes with the character of the neighborhood, which is probably some of the concerns for the foothill communities. I don't support that, but I think it's a program that works, and it's certainly a program that DWP has done a pretty good job on. So I would support the programs you just mentioned. Answer the question?
You have some time left. My understanding is that DWP plans to put solar in all the public city buildings.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. My understanding is that DWP is planning on putting solar panels in all the public buildings, including all the schools, LAUSD schools, and that people will be able to, through their DWP bill, contribute to that if they're not in a position to put solar on their own homes.
That's true. I don't know how far along they are, to be honest with you. And the district, when I was there, initiated some of the solar panels that were built at Poly High School, and some of them that were built at Byrd Middle School, which are the ones that I'm more familiar with in Sun Valley. Those went in, and the district did make, was able to get a rebate as a result of having these solar panels on their rooftops.
Thank you.
Okay, so the question was on fracking.
Clean energy, which includes the FIT program, solar, which is part of that. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay, fracking, clean energy, which includes the FIT program, which is part of the solar program, and wind and the HYPE program.
Okay, so fracking, I think many people have seen, the serious environmental impacts that come from, lots of water that gets pumped into the ground and to try to get the natural gas. And it's very dangerous. It could be, it's bad for water quality, explosive, etc. So I support a ban on fracking. I've worked on that issue both at the state level and locally. On renewable energy, clean energy, we have to continue to move as a city, as a state, as a country towards cleaner alternative fuels and power. So I strongly support the idea of more solar. The FIT program is a feed-in tariff. What does that mean? It's that you basically, as a homeowner, as a business person, you get paid a certain amount, or potentially get paid a certain amount. It's higher. I mean, you get paid more than what it would cost to produce power in an alternative way, but it's an incentive. It's more of a business incentive for people to actually create more solar power in the city of Los Angeles. I support trying to move in that direction, but here's my concern. I'm really concerned about the rate impacts that it has on us as DWP ratepayers. So I will not support any program that turns around and increases our rates as DWP ratepayers. So we have to be able to balance. I did work at the Department of Water and Power, and my job was to be able to reduce and prevent rate increases. And these are the things that I've fought against if they were going to increase our rates. So we have to be really careful. You can't just say, yes, 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 I support everything, without having the reality of what our bill is going to look like, because it will increase your bill.
All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask 3 more questions. Rosemary's going to ask 3 more questions. We're going to have the public. We're going to have 3 questions from the public, and then we'll do closing statements. So we're at 9 more questions and then closing statements, and then we'll all hold hands and have cake. All right, this is question number 28. We'll start with Cindy. How do you intend to eliminate next year's projected budget deficit of $165 million and the $425 million cumulative deficit over the next 3 years?
Okay, that's one of our biggest issues, because we could talk about, wanting to provide all these city services, and if we can't take care of our budget, which the council has not been able to, I think, deal with the long-term structural deficit that exists in our budget, then you know what? We're not going to be able to get our streets fixed, our sidewalks repaired, our bulky items, cleaned up. The parks, they look terrible, as we all know. We're not going to be able to do all that unless we actually do some real budget reform. I want to engage on those issues. Right now, we don't have a voice in Council District 6 on budget issues. Our council member is not directly engaged on the budget issues that'll actually bring about real reform. The biggest contributors to this is the city's retirement, pensions, difficult issues, really tough issues to deal with. So we have to be able to actually go in there and push. My number one priority is you. My number one priority is making sure that you are able to get the city services that we deserve. The way the budget is currently done, you will never get it. They're going to tell you it's going to take 70 years for your street to be paved. It's going to take 100 years for them to actually come fix these broken water pipes that explode and burst at different times. It's going to take 2 weeks for you to finally get something that should be picked up the same day, for it to be picked up. The city services are going to continue to get worse and worse. So what I want to do is I want to be definitely involved right at the center of these discussions. Tough decisions are going to have to be made, but you know what? I'm going to be able to make those decisions for you, because I have no special interest, big money interest supporting me. It's you. It's the community. You elect me. It's going to be about you, and tough decisions are going to have to be made on the budget, and I'm ready and willing to make the changes, make the tough decisions today, that are going to be able to, that's going to impact our future. That those decisions have to be made today. And so far, after 18 months of being in office, the council member has failed to work with those issues that are going to increase the services that we get as residents here in this district.
Before we proceed, I noticed that when a lot of clapping happens during someone's answer, it's taking away from their time. So if you could wait to applaud at the end of what each speaker says, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. So as we see the increase in revenues, thanks to the fact that the economy is now starting to turn around, it doesn't give us an excuse to spend more. In fact, I think we need to prioritize and make sure that we dig ourselves out of this mess. The city is currently negotiating with all of our city unions, and I really believe that part of solving this issue of the $165 million is to ensure that our employees are also part of the solution and making contributions to the cost of their medical coverage. And in terms of, that is one area that we can definitely engage in. But in terms of the priorities and what things that I've certainly been fighting for have been, the sidewalk repairs and making sure that we are investing in our city streets. You will see every day in my district the amount of street services and the folks repairing our streets every single day. In one community or another, it's happening because we've made sure that that we're fighting for those types of services. But you cannot, and I caution all of us, as the economy is starting to turn around and people are starting to think that we're getting ourselves out of this mess, we cannot spend the money that we don't have. We have a structural deficit of $425 million that we need to solve over the next 3 years. So we need to ensure that as the economy is turning around and we are projecting an increase in revenue, that we're smart and that we're not digging ourselves further into a problem and prolonging the deficit for longer years. So we need to be very cognizant of that.
Thank you. Having been involved with a number of city projects, as certainly you have, Nuys, I'm sure you've encountered the problems with recreation and parks and their lack of efficiency in addressing important issues and getting things done in a timely manner. A lot of times people are waiting for resolution for a year, 2 years, and it's constant nagging and recontacting. What can be done to make Rex and Park more efficient?
More money and more staff. I mean, the fact that we have added more parks to this department, and the fact that we don't necessarily, and I say this, as much as we want to, through Prop K, another means, Prop O is another one, we've accessed some of this money to create parks, in which we need. My district is park deficient. We need more open space. But as we're doing that, we also have to take into consideration the maintenance that goes along with it. We have these parks that are going to come online in Sun Valley, for example. We have a 40-acre park that's going to open within the next couple of months on a former landfill. It's a 40-acre park on a former landfill that we can't do much with, but instead we're going to turn into a park. We have the Rory Shaw wetlands in Sun Valley on Strathern and Tahunga, which is a 46-acre site and a former gravel pit and landfill. I mean, we have all these opportunities to try to do something different with the land. Now that these parts of the district have been dormant for quite some time, so now we can do something on them. But we also have to be very cognizant of the fact that we have to also build in some maintenance. Who's going to get to clean these areas? Who's going to make sure that they're locked up after sunset and that we have enough park rangers to service all of our parks? So as I'm building parks, I'm also making sure that we're maintaining them, because that's the saddest thing about doing this is if you open something beautiful for a neighborhood and we don't take pride in it, we don't take care of it, and it deteriorates because the community didn't take ownership of this area. It's the saddest thing I've ever seen. So we need to ensure that we're also as great as I think Rick and Parks is, because the parks in my area, they do the very best that they can, but we also have to ensure that we're giving them the proper tools to be able to maintain some of these parks, because currently I feel like we're failing in that department.
Thank you. Cindy?
I think the last sentence that the council member said, I completely agree with her. They are failing in the department of taking care of our parks. How many of you have been to Sun Valley Park recently? Probably not a lot of people. Why? Or maybe somebody back there. You drive by it, they're homeless encampments. I go there and I get harassed every single time. You go into the restroom, they're using drugs. This is our reality. Those of you that live in Sun Valley Park or live near in Sun Valley, you will see what's going on. Van Nuys, let's go walk around. Let's just go right around the street and you'll see our park, what it looks like. Let's go to Sepulveda Park. Let's go to Lake Balboa. You know, I go walk there. Graffiti, that wasn't what it used to look like. These are the basic city services. If you cannot take care of the parks, then you failed us as a council member. Now, again, you have a choice. You have a choice in this election. Continue to just talk about what we can do. How can we not have at least cleaned up our parks? How hard is that? Let's take that pickup truck and let's clean up Sam Valley Park tonight. I'll go help you. Let's get Nuys, let's get all of us. Let's go clean up that park. That's what we should be doing. Again, she is absolutely right. They have failed when it comes to taking care of our parks.
All right, for my second to last question for you ladies, I'm going to ask, it's going to be 3 location-specific questions. So I'll just go down the list here. First, what can be done to ensure public safety as it relates to the Sawyer fuels located on Hazeltine? These are massive fuel storage tanks located in a residential neighborhood. The second location-specific question, what can be done with the Sun Valley landfill? And the third one, the stakeholders of Lake Balboa want a definite answer to the proposed development by the Moss Group on the corner of Balboa and Victory. Will you let the rezoning happen, yes or no? So the Sawyer Fuels on Hazeltine, Sun Valley landfill, and the proposed development on Balboa and Victory. Cindy, you started.
Okay,
you're
sorry, I
recognized.
forgot. Okay, so on all those 3 issues, I'm with you. Community members, I'm with you. Those of you that have known me for a long time, you know I'm with you. So the landfill, we've been fighting that since, you know, at least 2002, even before I was a member of the state legislature, and we're going to fight it. You know, Mike Agar has been probably one of our strongest leaders there. Stella Arrington, who's over here from Sun Valley, and others that I can mention. You have been leaders, and you know that. You could stand up and you could say, yeah, Cindy was with us a decade ago, and she's going to continue to be with us. We're going to fight that, and we're going to fight more aggressively than anybody has ever fought for you, and you know that. So you have my commitment on that. The people from Lake Balboa, I'm with you. I was there with you when 117 of us got together at that meeting, and 70 plus, I forget how many of us were at that land use committee, which is not common to see that many people showing up to neighborhood council land use committees. I'm with you. I completely am opposed to that project. That project, we should have never had to go. The council member should have told us that this was going on. She should have issued a letter the day she found out that they were going to propose this big project. But yet again, I saw families, a family that I just saw that just met for the first, saw them there and just found their names out today, a baby. Here they are, young couple with the baby having to show up to a meeting at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night because they're fighting something that the council member should have been fighting herself. I'm opposed to rezoning, upzoning. I've consistently done that. I did that as a planning commissioner. I did that as a state assembly member. I will fight against the upzoning because, again, I am opposed to the overdevelopment of our communities. Those projects do not belong. You have my full commitment. The project in Lake Balboa right now, I'm not satisfied that they just said, oh, we're pulling the project back. What are they doing? They're just pulling the project back so that come March 3rd, they could decide, well, what happened with this election? Let's push forward with it. No, that is open space, and we should maintain the zoning currently. Metro should not give away that project to a developer that's going to overdevelop. And again, on the fields, you got my support. We're going to do everything we possibly can. Contaminated sites, it goes back to what I'm saying. Any contaminated sites, places where there's environmental problems, you have my support. The community, I'll be there for you. I've been there for you consistently. Whether I'm in elected office or not, you know I'm with you. That's why you call on me, and I'm happy to be there for you.
I need to set the record straight. You know, to give misinformation and tell people that this Moss project was something that came to my office and there was never any adequate community notification is not only a lie, but it's irresponsible. And the facts are this. the Moss project did come to the Neighborhood Council of Lake Balboa's Land Use Committee, which is where they were supposed to go. And they notified that Neighborhood Council that they were interested in developing this project. I have never given any developer on the Moss project any commitment that I would support that project. Never has that happened. And in fact, the only reason they withdrew their plans for rezoning in the planning department was because I issued a letter that was read at that meeting with over 100 people. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. So there has never been anything, there's never been any discussions of moving forward with that project unless they have community support. That has always been my position. It will continue to be my position after March 3rd, and those are the facts. But let's make it very clear that the only reason that they pulled, and I asked the developer to pull his proposal from the planning department, is because he doesn't have any community support. Without that, the project cannot move forward. And the community was satisfied with that. There was over 180 community members there that have called me, that I've met with. They know where I stand. So let's just make sure we have the facts correct and that we're not inciting lies and making up stories because we're trying to get ourselves elected. I'm already here. That is my record. I'm on the record on that. And so if there's anybody here that lives in that community of Lake Balboa, please let it be known. Justin, I think you're back there. You know what my position is. So I think I've made myself clear. In terms of the Sun Valley landfill, are you talking about Bradley landfill? What particular landfill are you talking about?
The question that was
There are several former landfills that have been closed for a number of years, and there is a landfill now that is being converted into a MRF. So which one are you referring to?
that question emailed in was, please ask the candidates what they can do with the Sun Valley landfill.
Okay. Well, I don't know which one in particular they're talking about, but there is Bradley landfill that is closed and it's going to get converted into probably a MRF. But there are other things going on in Sun Valley that people need to be very well aware about. And one of them is that we currently are the home to some of the largest trash haulers and MRFs in the area, where trash gets sorted and gets sent somewhere else. Because of the community and a working group that we have in Sun Valley, spearheaded by Mr. Michael Guerra, we finally got one of those trash haulers to finally agree to close its operation. I've been very clear about, if you're going to do business in my district and you currently have a city contract and you're not adhering to the laws of this community in terms of what you need to do in terms of air pollution, enclosure, filtration, and so on, then there is no way under my leadership that you are going to continue to get a city contract. It's unbelievable, the stuff that we've got to do, but we actually got the trash hauler to cover that operation, and we are very satisfied with that result. But we're going to continue working on more.
Thank you. Let me remind you, if you applaud during the presentation, you really are taking time away from them, and it's precious time, it's limited. So let me go on with the next question. This is not only a local, state, it's also a national, international issue. The issue about the TPP and fast tracking, and it's going to affect us greatly. And I don't want to indicate which way I feel on it, but I would like to know if you support fast track and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, both of you.
Yeah, well, we currently have a huge problem at the port right now where we can't, there's been almost 30 ships out offshore waiting to come into the port to unload some of their big cargo. So we have a huge labor issue down at the port. We cannot move goods in and out of these areas without having a contract down at the port. So it's something that we should probably be very concerned about. The Panama Canal is scheduled to open within the next 2 years. That's absolutely going to impact the kind of trade and the kind of business that the port's going to do. It's a proprietary department. There is a lot of money that comes through the city of Los Angeles, Port of LA. So we need to protect that, but we also need to ensure that the workers down at the port are also being treated fairly. So we have a huge problem down there. So in terms of fast tracking, I'm just more concerned about the fact that we continue to have work stoppages down at the port, and we're not. We've had people that have been out at sea for almost 3 weeks, if not longer. because of the labor dispute that we have at the port. So we need to resolve that before we move forward. We need to figure out ways to transport our goods. We consume more in this country than we export. And so when we want to get our fancy iPad, we want to get that toy for Christmas, guess where it has to come through? It has to come through our ports. It has to get loaded onto trains. And a lot of these trains come in and out of communities that look like ours. And so the environmental impact that has to try to transport that iPad or that laptop, we pay a huge, huge consequence in terms of our air quality, in terms of what it does to move goods through the city, and in terms of the impacts, the negative environmental impacts that communities like Sun Valley unfortunately have to deal with. So I like to deal with that first before we move on to continuing to expand railroads and getting more goods and services in and out of these communities, because unfortunately they do come through communities like ours.
Thank you. Cindy.
Okay, so, here in LA, there's, our harbor is one of the busiest harbors in the world. And we have to make sure that there's contracts, there's agreements, that it continues to function, because it's a tremendous economic engine and resource for the city of LA. On the issue of, just international trade agreements, I will tell you that I'm strongly opposed to any international trade agreements that take jobs away from California and take jobs away from the United States of America. We felt that impact here in the San Fernando Valley when NAFTA went through. We lost these jobs that were here in Van Nuys, that were in Pacoima, that were in Burbank, that were in Sun Valley, that were in our neighborhoods. Those were really good middle-class jobs. On my block alone, there was probably at least 3. My parents could probably remind me all the, how many, maybe more, because I was, still, younger. It's 3 or 4 families that they were uprooted. They lost their jobs, and they had to go to Kentucky, or they went on the unemployment lines. So we have to make sure that when we discuss trade and when we discuss these issues, that we make sure that we are prioritizing U.S. workers, U.S. jobs, keeping jobs here, because again, it goes back to how do we truly get people out of poverty? That's how we get people out of poverty. It's not just union contracts. It's not just minimum wage. It's looking at the system in a much more comprehensive way. And you've got my commitment to work on those and to stand up for you, to stand up for people and keep the jobs here in our city and at minimum in our state.
All right, for my last question of the night, this